Well done, Bobby Charlton. Well done, Manchester United.
Beckham. It's a Sheringham. And Solskjaer has done it. Bobby Sarr saved it. United again. Renee! A magnificent goal by Robin van
Persie. Welcome to United Hour, your official redcafe.net podcast done by members of redcafe.net. My name is Mark.
And I'm Ashwin.
Just the two of us this evening, because apparently everyone's still out on the piss after the Chelsea result last night. And who could blame them? Who could blame them? And, great 2-0 win, great bounce back win, following the almost fever pitch anticipation, what was the PSG game. I remember from when we did sort of pan Fulham and dispatch them rather too easily. They turned up, but they are just that bad. I remember being sat here as we were previewing the whole thing, and it seems easy to say now that, you know, maybe just we all at that time were getting a little bit carried away with what this team was, or indeed not being able to see what they weren't. And it did seem that PSG game, which we lost 2-0, 2 away goals for PSG, and then a Paul Pogba sending off towards the end there, we seemed to be weighed under the expectations. We didn't really. It was the first kind of performance where we didn't turn up under Solskjaer, and yeah, it just. I remember feeling so flat on the Wednesday after seeing the result and just sort of taking it all in and what have you, and it just. All the momentum would seem to go, and it was really that second half where we didn't even manage to lay a glove on him. I mean, how were you seeing it?
Yeah, I thought the first half was pretty evenly balanced. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but and it almost sounds like you're apologizing. But I thought that, I mean, just losing Lingard, because Lingard, I mean, Martial was not, even when he was on, he didn't really have it that night. I think maybe the occasion in and of itself got too much to him. Whatever happens, he just did not have a great first half. But Lingard was really, really key for us in protecting Young. And then also, like, he was really, he launched a few, the counterattacks that we did have.
Yeah.
And he looked very sharp. He looked very up for it. I always think these bigger matches kind of suit the type of player he is more than, like when we're clearly the better side. But yeah, I thought it was pretty evenly balanced. They had a few chances where they nearly broke us down, but didn't. Pogba had one early in the match when he just blew past, I think it was Kimpembe, and then put in a cross, but that got cleared. So yeah, I mean, I just thought it was a pretty even first half. But then as soon as those injuries happened, you just see the players that were brought on. So I think Sanchez came in for Martial, and then Mata came in for Lingard, and we kept the same formation. And I think, we'll talk about Chelsea in a little bit, but you see, I just don't think that you can play Mata on the right flank against a team the quality of PSG. And no. Sanchez just does not hold the width at all. Like I think I remember messaging in our group, but his average position in the match when he came on, he was actually deeper than Pogba. So there's no width at all. So even when we were, it just ended up with us getting pinned in so constantly because there was, like you just saw their fullbacks bombing on constantly in that second half. And whereas in the first half, yeah, they did overlap a bit, but they had to be wary of, Lingard and Martial's pace on the counter. So they couldn't really bomb forward like that and keep us pinned in as much. And then, everything just kind of compounds. And then Pogba, to be fair, did not have his finest hour defensively. I don't think he could quite figure out where he needed to position himself. And then also he struggled with being man-marked by Marquinhos, who was phenomenal in that match. He was really, really excellent. And then, that just Verratti and Marquinhos, I think they, I know Di Maria, obviously, the piece of shit, had a really good match, and Mbappe grabbed the headlines, but I really thought those two were the match winners for them because they just bossed it in the midfield. We couldn't even come close to them.
No, and they definitely had a measure of control on the whole game, which I think was, in particular, with it being an area that I think that we as fans had seen so much improvement in over the course of obviously Solskjaer's tenure with ourselves, and with that starting three of Matic, Pogba and Herrera, which I still, and again we've got evidence of it from last night as well, but I still think is capable of mixing it with any midfield, certainly in our league, and by extension with a lot of leagues and a lot of teams in terms of the top end teams in Europe as well. I think, particularly when Pogba's on song, and I think that was kind of the key for me, is that they found a way to. They were really the first team that found a way to stifle Pogba, and that's kind of worrying going into the Liverpool game, which obviously we'll come on to in a second, but obviously wasn't even that much of an issue in the Chelsea game last night. But I think teams will be going into it right now thinking if you can keep a handle on Paul Pogba, then you can pretty much nullify a lot of the good that it is that we're going to try to be doing. Like, I think at that point it does need then a Martial to step up. It needs Rashford to step up. It needs Lingard, and who to be fair, I think did. I agree with you that I think he did have a great performance. It was very Parkian, I guess.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
That seems to be his sort of generational equivalent, I guess you could say, in terms of like when you're going sort of pan generations and you try and find examples of players from the latter day. He is sort of the modern day Park, in the sense that he is the one who's going to be trusted in these big games, because maybe more so than Park, he gets it, being obviously a part of the academy and being part of the youth system, but also being on the sort of slighter side and knowing that he has to outwork everyone on the pitch.
He wants to work, right? Like, that's the thing. Oh, yeah. He wants to work. So that makes, like I said, like you just look at how, Young wasn't good at any point in the match, but you look at how much more vulnerable and how much more exposed he was when Lingard went out. And you just see, like, I understand. I think there is a pretty good argument that Lingard shouldn't be a nailed-on starting 11 player for Manchester United. That's an argument I to some degree agree with. But, like, anybody that still thinks that he's not a United quality player after watching the difference in our performance with him and without him, I would say, let alone PSG was the starkest contrast. But, just under Solskjaer, you can see it when he doesn't play versus when he plays. We look way more solid defensively and just more dynamic in our interchanges in the final third. So I just think he's so key right now, given the options that Solskjaer has at his disposal. If we are playing a 4-3-3, he's so necessary for that system. With him and Rashford up top, the pressing they do is also, it's a massive difference, and it was a big blow to lose him. And then, not that Mata is a bad player, but clearly, that right flank is just a bridge too far for him at this point in his career.
It's definitely a problem area, and I think that it's definitely one that's going to get addressed in the summer. And there's obviously a few names that have
Sancho.
That's definitely one of the names that's out there, amongst others, absolutely, including some which are in our own youth setup at the minute as well. So it's a difficult one, because it's you kind of don't want to go down the the inside forward route with it. Like I think Hudson-Odoi's name was actually
mentioned,
brought up. Yeah, it was brought up. I don't know if it's been actually if he's been linked to us in anything serious.
I think his primary position, I think I was reading in the youth team, was like left wing though, right?
Well, yeah, because he's predominantly right-footed.
Right.
But again, I don't know if it's better or not to have a natural winger in that sense. Like we used to play, I think Ronaldo off the left, and Nani would sort of be the natural, holding the natural width on the right hand side a lot of the time as well, being obviously the naturally right-footed player, even though he was pretty close to being naturally two-footed as well, given some of the things he could do with his left foot. But
right,
he Young, that entire right side needs a rework, and I think next year it will probably come in the form of giving Dalot, I think, a lot more game time. I think it will probably start to get a lot more game time now in sort of the less consequential league games, or league games where we're expecting to pick up a comfortable win. Like the Fulham games like that, for instance, I think he'll get a lot more of those in towards the end of the season. I think he'll then be our starting right back for next season, and then Ashley Young will probably be the big game right back, I guess you could say, in the more sort of crunch times. I could see him getting a few starts at right back next season. But the entire thing needs addressing in the most horrible way.
We definitely need. I think we really need to bring in an experienced right back, because what would be nice about that is Dalot has played left back for us, but also that's I think where the majority of his appearances for Porto came. For the first team. I know that for the youth teams for Portugal, and when he was in the reserves or whatever they do in Portugal, and over there, I know that he's predominantly played right back, but he does have the flexibility to play left back. And then obviously we know Young can play both fullback positions. So I think bringing in an experienced right back, and I'm assuming Valencia's gone because he might as well be gone, to be honest.
Well, I think Valencia and Darmian are probably two of the first ones that are out the door.
Right.
One of them will be a fairly bit more respectable than the other one, I think. But yeah, I'm weird about Dalot because I like him and I think he's a great footballer, and I think he will be one of the better right backs in world football. I think he, rather than getting into a mode that plagued a lot of our young defenders in sort of Ferguson's latter days, where Phil Jones and Chris Smalling would start seeing stints at right back. It's just get him in his proper position and get him in there now. And I'm not adverse to not buying a right back in the summer if it means that Ashley Young is the backup. If the consideration is that Ashley Young is going to be the guy moving forward, then that's very much a concern, because he's not starting quality right back. Yeah. Even though he doesn't necessarily embarrass himself, we're in a position whereby we need to expect more.
Well, look, if we want to challenge for, the goal, obviously, I don't know if we will. I doubt we're going to be good enough next year. But it's like, you want to win the league, which I think is actually, if we address certain positions, isn't such a lofty target even for next season. But Champions League, obviously that the goal is to win it, but I don't think we would be in a position next year where the squad we have at our disposal is strong enough to do that, which is fine. That's just the reality of where we are in building the squad back up. But yeah, if those are your goals, Ashley Young just cannot be really even an option at right back. No. But, for now, for the time being, I was fine with the 1-year extension he got. I think the club has some, as problematic as right back is, Dalot is a highly touted prospect. And I think they probably have some faith in him to come good after adjusting for a year or so. And I just think there are bigger problem areas in the squad that need to be addressed before that, since we already did at least put some investment to it last summer.
Yeah, and I think you would have a situation going into the summer whereby you would have Ashley Young, Dalot, Tuanzebe can play right back, Tim Fosu-Mensah can play right back, Darmian and Valencia would be gone, but you would have 4 right backs who or 4 people who can play right back. Phil Jones can even play right back. So you've got 5 options
can even
there.
play right back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there you go. 6 options. It's not a pressing concern as right back. Not nearly as much as what I think having a proper staple in the center of defense.
That and I think, just to bring it back to PSG, we need. I love Herrera. I think he's just a perfect midfielder. Complements. He's one of those midfielders that can really complement any other type of player you put with him. He's not gonna. He never. The way I think about him is he never takes anything off the table. He only, he's just very, very complimentary to no matter who you want to pair him with, which is a credit to him. But he is not the most creative player. At least I do think that Van Gaal and Mourinho coached that out of him or something. Because I remember watching some of him at Bilbao, and he was. I mean, I know he played as a 10 there, so naturally he had to kind of look to create more. But just in general, I do think that it's been sussed out of him a bit. But anyway, I just think that we either need to give Fred and Pereira more chances and see if they are capable of providing that extra little bit of creativity when, you come there was space obviously to exploit against PSG with them man-marking Pogba. We just did not really either have an idea of how to do it or have a player capable of doing it. And I think it's just more in midfield in that sense. And then also, I know Matic has had a little bit of a resurgence under Solskjaer, but I do think that, he's 30. We definitely need to. I know Herrera's 32, and I do think Herrera can play as that defensive shield at times. We've seen him do it. We saw it for an entire year under Mourinho, and he was great. But I still think that we need an understudy at that position, and then also, and then another box-to-box role, a little bit more creative of an option. So,
yeah, I think pre-season, I think what Solskjaer sees out of some of the youth team lads will probably dictate. I think a lot of what happens there. I don't think it's again, we got. If you've got a full squad, for instance, I think you've got a situation whereby Lindelof can play there, or he would be capable of playing there. At least his skill set dictates that he would be. Pogba can play in a holding position. You've got McTominay and Fosu-Mensah again, a bunch of other players who can play in that position, and then players coming up behind them like Garner and what have you as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that. Again, I don't think that'll be a purchase. I do take your point about Herrera, but again, and this is probably as good a segue as I'm going to get to keep it seamless. But to me, it's not even a case of where Herrera needs to be particularly creative. I just think he needs to have. This is going to be a really weird sentence. He doesn't need to be more creative. He just needs to have more end product. I think that he is creative. I like the way he thinks. I like the way that he manipulates space in the midfield and the way that opens up things for everybody else to work in. But I think maybe with Herrera, in terms of his prime position, would be on the right-hand side of a midfield diamond, like we saw him playing in last night against Chelsea, to particularly devastating effect in the 33rd minute. Getting a header. I never thought I'd see Ander Herrera score a header. And it was just
he saw the whole play. He, like you just said, he's so intelligent. But he kind of, as soon as he saw the ball moving on that left side, he knew where the space was, and he basically said it in the post match where he said, we knew that was a weak area, a problem area for Chelsea. But it's one thing to know about it before the match, have your manager tell you before the match. It's another to actually apply it in the game situation, and it was such a good run. And yeah, I do think the diamond, it's more about, I think maybe what you're trying to say is the role he's being given. If it is a more in that diamond, when him and Pogba, they had to get forward, right? There's no option. They had to get forward. So I think maybe what you're saying is more in the right position, where you give him in certain instructions, he can be that additional creative player that you need.
Yeah, and he was because in a sense, then when you've got that guy who's playing as a false 9 / classic 10, like Mata was, who's playing in the hole and at the tip of that diamond, or as Lingard has been doing as well, I think what that then gives Herrera license to do is sometimes it allows him, as you say, to get forward, but he is the spare man in that sense. He is the man that's not being picked up. And because he is so intelligent, it allows him to arrive in the space in the way that he should, and he can see the play evolve in front of him without necessarily having to be the one who's constantly dictating it. It might be a case where he is kind of one of those Lingard type players whereby it's the work that he does off of the ball rather than the work that he necessarily does on it that is so crucial to what he gives us. And we do have a lot of players like that. And I think we're going to need players, obviously, when it comes down to brass tacks, who are capable of doing it, obviously, with the ball at their feet as well. And I think...
Well, like, Herrera is... And this is something with Matic that I think you can see now as he's older. But Herrera is one of the few players in our team, I would say, definitely probably our only midfielder who, you kind of, in a one-on-one situation, you trust him to not get beat, to win the ball even. Not just stop the player, but actually to win the ball back, regain possession. I think Shaw is pretty good at that. Smalling, for all of his other flaws, is good at that. And really, other than those three, in just that very specific scenario of winning a challenge, winning 1v1 situations, regaining possession, I think those three players are really good in our side. But it's an area, and I again against PSG, I thought you saw that where they were able to pass through us. These high level teams, are we good enough yet? Do we have that quality yet to prevent us from getting played through? And PSG obviously was able to, but Chelsea, and I know that Chelsea is they're in terrible form right now, but we've gone to Stamford Bridge and they've been in terrible form before and gotten absolutely handled. So to go there and just thoroughly outplay them, it said a lot. And Herrera was, I know that, I think, who was it? I forgot who was announcing yesterday, but they had him as the man of the match. I think it was Keown, but for me it was Herrera by far. I thought he was everywhere.
I think you could probably argue the case for either Pogba or Herrera. I think for, obviously a goal and an assist gets you, and indeed just celebrating by laying on your stomach with your arms out. That's man of the match, wherever in anyone's book. Because that photo, if anyone's not seen the photo taken from behind the goal, then seek it out because it's class. But yeah, just on Herrera, or more so that Herrera and us being able to expose that weakness there, and Herrera mentioning it. I'd just also like to point out that I mentioned that in the match day thread before the game, where I posted up 3 possible lineups and said that Alonso needed to be targeted.
Yeah.
So, Ole, I'm just saying. I'm not attached to my job or anything like that. So if you fancy giving us a ring,
well, it's funny. I think during the PSG match, I was saying that we should switch to a diamond because, like, after the injuries, because we just did not, we were not, like, the players we brought in were not suited to playing a 4-3-3. So I guess both of us, maybe Ole needs to free up.
Give us a ring.
Yeah, free up a little money.
Someone tag him in this. Yeah, absolutely. Moving swiftly on, the Chelsea game as a whole came not as a massive surprise, but certainly a hugely welcome one. And I think we really needed the result. And I think more to the point, I think Ole really needed the result after that PSG performance because we were incredibly flat.
And the Sharks were definitely circling.
Yeah, and we were like it was the first time that we had maybe looked unconvincing, but also not gotten the result at the end of it as well. Like Burnley, you can argue, but we should have had Burnley put away in the first half before they even scored their first goal.
Yeah.
So like that's frustrating, and I think objectively people could go back over that match and say, actually no, like they at the very least deserved the point that they got. Like we definitely did deserve to take nothing away from that game. But even with this whole, being 11 points back on the top 4 and then making it our own now, so that our fate is kind of in our own hands with it, and the FA Cup wins and the match away against Tottenham, and it all it took was this sort of one performance whereby we weren't really that convincing. But that was more, I think, to do with two really key components of that front three going down, and Ollie just made the wrong decision, but the whole team was flat.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was like, I think there was a lot of tactical masterclass by Tuchel, kind of that narrative after the match, and I just did not see that at all. I mean, not that he was. I mean, he deserves credit for finding a solution in their midfield, considering the options he has. So I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve credit, but it wasn't like I didn't think Solskjaer seemed clueless. I think he just, like you said, he just made the wrong choices, and the best thing about that is that he quickly, the next match, changes for like the formation and immediately identifies, okay, this is what I have at my disposal. So I can either stick with a 4-3-3, which has served me well, but maybe not for the players I have, available to me currently, or I can change my formation and try and tweak it and, play in a different way. And that is something that deserves a lot of credit. And like, I think with Mourinho this year and last year, we saw a lot of different formations and lineups, but it was very, very hard to understand what the specific tactical instruction was for each of these. But when you watched yesterday, it was very obvious, Mata was the 10, Lukaku and Rashford are up top, Pogba and Herrera have license to get forward, in possession. You could see what exactly each player was asked to do. There was no confusion over that. And for him to have such clarity with, since the moment he's come in to the position, just the fact that there is a clear, I think if you ask the players what is expected of them before a match, they would know how to answer that question. Whereas with Mourinho, I think that they just did not understand what he was even asking of them, and it's just so obvious watching us. We're like, it's not just about he has them playing well and he has them happy, and like that is part of it. But part of them being happy isn't just that Solskjaer comes in and puts his arm around them and smiles at them. It's that they actually understand what he's asking of them, and they feel that he is putting them in positions to bring their strengths to bear versus, whereas feeling like you're being asked to do something that is extremely foreign to you, or that you're not good at. And like, even if it's just being able to communicate that effectively is, that can really just be the difference in how you're trying to get across your point versus, it being a completely different thing. Like, I think there are probably times Mourinho did want, I think he set us up in a diamond and stuff like that before, but none of these guys knew what the hell they were doing. So it just speaks to that the communication, like that is a talent. That is arguably the biggest talent. When you're dealing with already talented players, I would much rather have a manager who can connect with them and has a good relationship with them and can communicate exactly what he wants from them and get it from them. That's what you want, right? Just to extract the top level from your players. So the fact that he's consistently doing that is such a big plus for him.
Yeah, and you kind of nailed it there in the sense where you're saying, like, we've got top class players. That there is top class players that permeate the entire squad. Solskjaer finds a way to, like, rather than Mourinho, who trusted in individual ability or individuals who he trusted to get us through games and to get us out of certain situations, we're now got a manager who trusts the collective to get us out of situations, and that's obviously going to be much greater and be much more effective than just relying on the individual players to do that. The key thing about the Chelsea game, and we should probably just start rounding off into this by sort of maybe touching on PSG in the second leg a bit later on, but we won't do a full preview of that as of yet because there's probably another episode to come before that, given Liverpool. But to round into the Chelsea game, they responded in such a huge way, from a work rate standpoint. The one thing that you kind of got is that although we were never really under any great amount of pressure from Chelsea, you could see in our players that they had given absolutely everything. they had left it all on the field. Juan Mata looked absolutely gone.
Yeah,
like he looked like a shell of a man as he was walking off the pitch, and that even though he wasn't eminently involved in the game in the most. Again, on the ball, he wasn't having the greatest effect on the game. He had by no means a bad game. It was probably maybe around about 6.5, 7 out of 10 sort of game for him. But it was such a different kind of performance. It was a performance that I'd never really seen from him before. In just how much he got in and around Jorginho. Like someone even said that
Jorginho is such shit too. But yeah, please, sorry, go ahead.
Someone actually said that Juan Mata bossed someone physically.
Yeah, I saw that.
and how forlorn as a player in Jorginho do you have to be bossed physically by Juan Mata? It's like, how much off of the pace do you honestly need to be? So it would almost be funny seeing like a Mata versus Kante type battle in that area of the pitch. Like, that would have been hilarious to me to see that. But Mata just seemed to know what to do, and it was good for him. It was exactly the kind of performance that he needed as well, because he just needed to muck in, and like, it's like, okay, you're going to play at the tip of the diamond, like, but now you need to go out and earn the fact that you're going to play there in a more consistent way, particularly if we've got Martial out until the middle of March and we've got Jesse out until not much before that as well. So there's definitely an opportunity for Juan over the next couple of games, and indeed for Lukaku as well, because he's going to find himself up top with Rashford now.
Sanchez can even play in that tip of the diamond role.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are opportunities now for these players who I don't think we were necessarily criticising them in the last episode, but like, Sanchez came on last night and did exactly what I want Sanchez to do. It was what we were saying in the last episode. Yeah. Come in, run your ass off, and you can be effective still. And I think he almost managed to fashion a chance for himself as well. Or at the very least, he did against Fulham when he came on.
He almost found Pereira on a...
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, he was involved in that counter-attack. So he can do that. And it was almost the polar opposite of what he was saying in the BBC interview that he had with Herrera, is that I need to be on the pitch. I need to be touching the ball. He's like, you need to sit your ass on the bench and start running your ass off a little bit first before we start talking about giving you the ball regularly. Like, but in terms of what he offered last night, he did everything perfectly in terms of a substitute performance, and Pereira was not too far behind that as well. Just in terms of Chelsea and the game as a whole, I don't think I've ever sat through, and this even goes back to when we used to play them. We seemingly used to play them all the time in the early part of this decade, like in cup competitions or whatever. But I don't ever remember, even when we had them at Old Trafford for the Champions League, the quarterfinals, I think it was in 2011.
Yeah, right.
Even those games, they were like, we've got the away goal, we're 2 goals up, and I still feel like they could come back and win this at any time. Like, all it takes is just one, and they're the type of team that could sort of turn a tie around in 5 minutes. And it just felt flat. Like, and it didn't feel like a team that had won the Premier League just 2 seasons ago. Like, I don't understand where that team has gone. It was just such a rubbish performance from them. And you look all the way through you look down their starting 11. I don't rate their keeper. I don't rate their centre-backs. I would probably take Azpilicueta and put him in our starting lineup at the minute, but that's kind of a default. Do you want Azpilicueta or do you want Ashley Young? I'd probably take Zappacosta ahead of Young, if I'm brutally honest.
I have no idea what they're doing. They look like us under Van Gaal. That's what they look like.
Yeah,
it's awful.
Exactly.
It's awful.
It's like, they really need to get rid of, like, that. That is not a Premier League stand, or that is not a side that should be expected to be challenging at the top of the table. They need to cut and dry. Like, they need to just get rid of Sarri, like, as quickly as they possibly can, and just start again, because it just didn't work. They tried, they took a gamble on it, and it just didn't work.
If you're gonna take, the thing is, like, that club is so weird, because, and this, I think, has been a problem for them going back to the second time they hired Mourinho. But it's basically that they don't churn. There's no like churning of the squad, right? So you hire Mourinho, and like that's fine because you have players suited to playing a counter-attacking style. He wins the league, they down tools, whatever. He gets sacked. Yeah, and it's not like, to be fair, it's not just players downing tools. Like Mourinho he had his third season meltdown. So like probably you would say he is largely to blame for that downturn, maybe more so than the players. I would at least say that after what we saw at United. Then Conte comes in, wins the league, playing a very a very defensive counter-attacking style. Next year, again, players all of a sudden decide that now they're not particularly happy with his management style or whatever, and I don't know if they necessarily down tools, but clearly they dropped a bit, and they finished fifth. Then you come into this year, and it's like so you have these players that are suited to winning in a counter-attacking style, in a more defensive shape, and then you bring in Sarri, who is possession-oriented, wants to high press, and you only get, you give him Jorginho, okay, fine, great, that's a player that he wants, we all know this, but you don't really do anything else with the squad.
No.
And so like you're asking a manager who has a very, very set concept of how he wants to play, and you're saying, okay, these experienced players, and it's not like a young squad, right? These are experienced players that are they're fully formed players. They're developed players. You're not going to teach them new tricks, or it'll be very, very difficult. And then you're like, okay, implement this attacking style. It's not going to happen. And I think one of the mistakes he's made is persisting with the veterans when what he should do is bring in some of these younger players, because he has a better chance of being able to mold them, because they are they're in developmental stages of their career, so he is way more likely to get what he wants and expects from them than say Hazard or Willian. Or it's not just to say like they're not listening to him because they're downing tools. I'm sure there is some of that going on, but I also think it's just these guys know what they're best at, and being asked to do something that they're not good at is just going to be frustrating for them. Whereas somebody like Ruben Loftus-Cheek or Callum Hudson, or Hudson-Odoi, they want to be on the pitch, right? They just want to play, and so you're more able to probably get them to do what you want them to do, because they're that's what their priority is. Then they know that to stay on the pitch, they have to carry out your instructions. And then the substitutions are just fucking bizarre. Like, I don't even, and it's like,
I was progressively happier with each substitution he made. That's not good.
The Azpilicueta one was shocking. I was like,
I was just at that point, my mouth was just agape.
That is Van Gaal. That is like literally what Van Gaal did. Would be substitute a fullback when you're chasing the game. Like, what? What are you doing?
And it was even the manner of the goals conceded as well. We touched on Herrera's goal with obviously him just stealing in behind Alonso. Alonso is for as fantastic as he can be going forward, and as much as he offers from set pieces and what have you, he can be exposed as a defensive liability.
He's not a left back. He's a left wing back, and
he is a left wing. There is a difference.
Yeah, it's a massive difference. And I think honestly, what we're seeing now is Conte did quite a good job with what he had at his disposal over the 2 years. And I'm not his biggest fan. I think he's a pretty annoying character, but look at what we're seeing. Great
hair though.
Yeah, phenomenal hair. You just look at what's happening with them now, and it's stunning. Luis is he's a space cadet. Like that second goal, I don't know what he was doing. He just headed it straight to Conte, but Pogba was right there. And Pogba just muscled him off the ball and played in Rashford. And it's like, and then you watch Luis closing down Rashford. Rashford had literally had 10 seconds to just wait for Pogba to get into the box.
I couldn't believe he just was allowed to pick up his head, and I think he just watched Pogba walk into the box rather than even be remotely worried. I don't think he even picked up his head because he was remotely worried about the pressure coming from, or the lack of pressure coming from Luiz. I think he was just literally watching Paul Pogba just run into the box and just go, and now.
Right.
And to be honest, it was very... I remember watching the replay back and thinking, that is a latter-day Brian Robson type goal, where you start the move from midfield, you drive into the box, and then you just towering header. He is
bigger than Rudiger, I think. He definitely looked bigger than Rudiger, and Rudiger is a big guy.
When he's got his chin up and his shoulders back, he looks bigger than everyone on the pitch.
Yeah.
And the consequence of that as well is that he also happens to be a bit faster than everyone on the pitch. And he's probably always the most skillful player on the pitch as well.
He had a run late in the second half where he basically just took it from our box and carried it 60, 70 yards. It was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous.
It was like Fellaini running towards the touchline. It was that effortless.
It was like Fellaini's chest control.
Absolutely. Effortless. World class chest control. But we need to shout out Rashford for that cross as well. And
just his work rate. I don't even think I don't even care.
He looked knackered. He looked absolutely knackered by the end of the game.
I don't even care. Lukaku could score a goal every match, and Rashford could never get on the score sheet, and I would want Rashford to play because I think he does so much.
Steady on.
Yeah, he does. I mean, I'm exaggerating, obviously.
And but I was hoping.
Yeah, but he just does so much. Like in that match, if he didn't have an assist, I would not have said he had a poor match, because he does so much work off the ball, just in terms of making runs to create space, and then obviously I touched upon it earlier, but just his pressing from the front, and then like you said, like yesterday, he was every time we had a chance to counter, he was, the road runner. He was just sprinting full speed. He absolutely, just destroyed Azpilicueta. I think that I would never play him a right back after watching that. That was just, he destroyed him. And then, he couldn't quite get the cross right, because if he had just led Lukaku, that was going to be another tap in. But he did make like a 70-yard run and beat 3 Chelsea players. So maybe he deserves a little bit of a pass on that.
Just a smidge. Yeah. And even towards the end as well, we had a number of chances whereby the ball broke to Ashley Young, and Young couldn't get it beyond the defender that Rashford was on. Like, if the ball had been played with just maybe a bit more pace on it, and if maybe Young had just aimed for the touchline rather than just trying to aim for Rashford's run, then there's every chance that Rashford, it's not even a case of every chance, he would have outpaced the defender that he was up against, and obviously would have been camped in their territory again. But it was just a really... It was almost like, and again, we touched on this in the last episode a little bit, but it was like watching a bog standard 2-0 at some mid-table Championship League One side in the FA Cup. Like that's what it looked like in terms of what we were up against yesterday. There was just nothing. Like, I understand that Chelsea had, I think it was 66% or 67% possession against 33 or 34, whatever it was for us.
Yeah.
And I don't remember Romero really, in the second half especially, I don't remember Romero making the one time that I felt like we were in any sort of real trouble was when Luke Shaw tracked back and stuck that tackle in, which him and Romero kind of both equally ended up on the worst end of. But that was the only time that I ever really saw any massive amounts of trouble where I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned Luke Shaw, because he was a rock yesterday. He was an absolute rock.
He is. He will never ever be, I don't think, quite fully appreciated for what he does defensively. But he has always been a more defensively solid left back than he ever has been going forward. I think we just need to kind of just understand that Luke Shaw for 2/3 of the pitch is going to be great in the build up, and is going to be a rock defensively, but he's never going to get to the byline and start whipping in crosses regularly. Like, he can threaten it and he can make the overlapping run, but that's all he is. He is just the overlapping run, like, that might take a defender's eye, but he might occasionally give you some quality from that area. I think he still is young enough that he can work on his end product from those sort of areas as well.
Yeah.
Particularly because he's obviously got Martial and Pogba occupying the same sort of spaces as him as well, and he might get a bit more free reign and a bit more time and space on the ball than he ever would if he was playing right back. But he is one of the better defensive left backs in the league, certainly.
Which left backs? I think I know we talked about this previously, but not on the pod. But I mean, I get you're generally assuming the best left backs are, at the top big six clubs. So like, outside of those, you would say maybe Chilwell is up there as one of the better left backs in the league.
Yeah.
But then then what? Who's his competition?
Well, no, I mean, you're probably looking at like Chilwell, Robertson,
right,
and Shaw,
right? Because I think he would walk into Spurs side, he would walk into Arsenal, he'd walk into Chelsea, he'd walk into City, because City's left back. That's their primary weak position.
Well, City are meant to be looking at Chilwell,
right? Right.
So like, and he is like, I see people saying that we need a new left back, and that it's such like. It's such a non-area of concern. They're just looking for problems in that instance. Like, people are listening to this. Luke Shaw is fine. Luke Shaw will continue to be fine, and let's just hope he can learn how to cross. Let's just learn it. But because defensively, you're never going to find him wanting.
Right. No, he's basically right. I mean, and like you said, he's exposed a lot of the time too, because Pogba and Martial have more license to get forward. So you're seeing that more under Solskjaer, where he's quite often in situations where he's facing a 2v1, and for the most part, he handles himself pretty well.
You just need to look at the defensive record.
Yeah.
Like, if it was an area of concern, teams would have found a way to exploit it.
And he had a couple of great tackles yesterday. There was the one where Lindelof slipped and he came over and cleared it, and then there was that other one where he him and Romero almost hurt each other.
Yeah, that was one I was talking about with
right.
where Pedro got in behind and like he just got a toe end on it, and it was great in the sense that it was a fantastic bit of awareness from him as well. I think that's what some people kind of accuse him of not having. I think they try and paint him as sort of the Phil Jones of left back, in the sense that he's just a not intelligent footballer, when he quite clearly is. Like, and he can use the ball really well. He had a really good game.
His first touch might be the best on the team, other than maybe. I mean, I think he has a better first touch consistently than even Pogba. Obviously,
I think it's definitely an underrated facet of his game.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like, his technical skill is definitely an underrated facet.
Yeah, he might not do anything special with the ball, which I think is the frustration. But he's also, he's very secure with the ball. You rarely have to worry about him getting dispossessed. And then even if he does get dispossessed, he's so fucking fast. He can recover. So it's just, like you said, there are so many bigger problems with and areas for improvement that, like, even if you're talking about a marginal improvement, in my opinion, from like what Luke Shaw is to what, I don't know, maybe the top 4 or 5 left backs in the world are giving you. I don't even know who the top 4 or 5 left backs are, to be completely honest. So if there is a gap, if there is a marginal improvement there, it's just not worth. Like, do you really want to spend 60, 70 million on a left back that's going to improve you slightly, or would you rather spend 60, 70 million, 80 million, 100 million on a right winger, which you don't even have in the fucking squad? It's just a no-brainer to me.
Yeah. Anyway, so we should probably touch on it a little bit more, just given that it kind of has been an afterthought, given the magnitude of the 2 games that have followed it. But the Fulham result as well was just a that was just kind of a walk in the park, wasn't it? Like, it was made all the better by Martial's goal, which was just, and I saw it, and I think I watched it about maybe like a couple of times back, and I thought, well, he's just ran, hasn't he? Like that's all he's done is he's run. But then you kind of watch it back again, and it's like, oh no, he's getting kicked pretty much from pillar to post as well, from the halfway line inwards. So yeah, the standard sort of game, really, wasn't it? Like that again was the kind of win that we usually have come accustomed to every Saturday.
Right. It was great. It was very exciting, and one thing I'm noticing a lot is we're not like, we controlled that match without dominating possession. And so like I like, we did the same against Chelsea, and we did the same against Arsenal for the most part. And for the first 60 minutes against Tottenham, we did that too. Like you're clearly, you're seeing a very, very defined tactical approach. There's no ambiguity about what Solskjaer wants the identity of the squad to be and how he wants them to play. And yeah, like the Fulham match was another example. We had 48% possession, but like every moment of brilliance, every moment of quality, for the most part was just coming from us, and you never felt very much in doubt, especially once we got the first goal. It just felt like a formality at that point.
I agree. It was and considering that I think we got it kind of relatively early as well. There was a bit of a shaky start, where we just didn't seem to get going for a couple of minutes, for about 10 minutes or so. But then, as you say, as soon as that first goal went in, that was all she wrote with the game, really. And
wasn't this the match where Lukaku got mad that Pogba didn't square to him after Pogba scored?
I don't even think that's what happened. I think he just sort of like had a weird reaction to it, but then people tried to sell it as that he was mad that he didn't get the ball squared to him. It's like, Lukaku's not that kind of player. Like I can't believe people tried to even make that up. That was hilarious. Although I was just about to say as well, we would hope for maybe something similar for this Sunday early kickoff. It is the game, isn't it? Like, for as much as obviously we were all happy that a big European night was happening again at Old Trafford, and obviously Chelsea and Arsenal and Spurs and the rest of it. But this is the one I think that we've all kind of been waiting for, haven't we? Like, it more so given the full context of the season and what Solskjaer has continuously been doing. His only loss has come obviously in a cup competition. In the league, he's still unbeaten, and I don't think we should kind of forget that. Or you can even go one better and say domestically, he's still unbeaten, and that's not so to be sniffed at. Sort of, I think he's 13 games into it. One of those obviously been a European game, so 12 games domestically, and he's still unbeaten. And
only one draw.
And one of those is a draw. So this is a difficult one for me, because eminently I thought PSG were there for the taking, and I was proven wrong. Evidently. I don't know. Are Liverpool there for the taking? They're very weird since Christmas. I gotta say.
I do think how Solskjaer has us playing, it really just, I think it depends on what Liverpool come there to do. Like, obviously they're going to come to win, but I mean more in terms of, I've seen them try to control possession, but I always think they're at their best when they're able to, capitalize on your errors when they press.
Yeah.
And I was just watching their match against Bayern today. When they had sustained possession, they didn't create much of anything. And the only times they did look threatening were when Bayern committed numbers forward, and there was space for them to run onto after they turned the ball over, or when they pressed Bayern high and created a turnover in the attacking third, and Bayern were kind of out of position, right? So, to me, I think the way we played against Chelsea, I think that could be kind of the approach Solskjaer takes, because we're not as good in wide areas as Liverpool. To be quite honest, like Robertson is a dynamic. I think for me he's the best left back in the league right now, and he's very dynamic going forward. And he has tremendous pace. Trent Alexander-Arnold, another solid fullback, good technical ability, gets forward. I think where Liverpool is weak is in the middle. They have workers, but they don't necessarily have, they don't have great creativity in the middle. They do have Wijnaldum and Henderson and Milner, who will always put in the yards and will always give you effort. But that to me is where we should be focusing. I think we should stay narrow, and I do think Liverpool is, obviously they're top of the league for a reason. They're not. When we say there for the taking, it's not as if we're suggesting that they're like totally shit. But
no.
Like you said, they have been pretty weird since Christmas, and maybe some of that is the pressure of being first in the table, and the fact that they haven't ever won the fucking Premier League. So
where do you stand on the centre back pairing for this game? Because this is the only thing that I can't get my head around, because I think that the team picks itself.
So Bailly and Lindelof, right? Are you on Smalling?
Well, no. This is what I was going to say, is that there seems to be a lot of calls, and this is me just browsing the forums today, that there seems to be a through line that Smalling, after his performance against Chelsea last night, seems pretty undroppable right now. He had a bit of a bad 10 minutes against Fulham, but was otherwise quite solid in the following 80. He's had a very, very good performance against Chelsea last night, where people are very impressed with him. I personally thought Lindelof was the better of the two. I think in terms of the back four, I think he was the third best performer. That's how I saw it. That's not to say that he didn't have a good game, because he did. But I would still put Lindelof and Shaw's performances last night ahead of what he was doing. And I think a lot of what he was getting praised for in terms of following the attacker out and then sort of going back and tracking in and falling back into position, that will get exposed against Liverpool.
Right.
Make no mistake about it. With Firmino and Mane and Salah, that will get exposed.
That's almost part of their tactic, right? Because Firmino loves to drop and then play in Mane, and then then spin and make a run himself. Like, that's just part of how he plays. I think that you have to start. I think the primary thing against Liverpool is you don't need to worry too much about aerial prowess, right? So that's like a big thing.
No.
That's Smalling's. That's the one thing he has that he's
Smalling takes care of Higuain.
Right. He is by far the best out of all of our center halves, our options. He is easily the one that you would say is not just good. Like, he is. I think he's one of the better central defenders in the league in the air. He's really, really excellent in the air. But that's not a concern against Liverpool. You're concerned about their movement, about their technical ability, and more importantly, I think that you need to be worried about them pressing you. And under Mourinho, it didn't matter so much, because clearly the center halves, especially when we played Liverpool, were under instruction to simply, kick the ball somewhere towards Lukaku's head. Under Solskjaer, I think that they're encouraged to keep possession more often. We're not like a super possession-oriented team, as I mentioned before, but there is an expectation that everybody on the ball should be comfortable on it and look to pass the ball, not just hoof it somewhere.
Especially against this Liverpool side as well. Like if you were going to say anything, is okay, where is the opportunity for Liverpool in terms of their counter pressing? Where is that going to come from?
It'd be Smalling.
Yeah, like by a long, long way. Like you would basically count on him not being a factor in the build-up, so that you can focus all your attention on Lindelof, or we do chance it, we do play a ball into him, and then what? Like there's panic stations everywhere. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you have a high press team and you're getting the ball into his feet, you are playing with fire there. And it's not even that he's made any gross errors against teams that do employ a high press, but it's just
that that he's capable.
The threat is always there.
And it's not even that for me. It's more that I think that he is the one that's most liable to
hoof.
Just hoof. And I understand that from his perspective because he's not comfortable on the ball. But for us, I expect Liverpool to have more possession than us. So I think that when we get the ball, it's very imperative that we have players that are comfortable on it and either can carry it out themselves or will at least play a forward pass. And one thing I don't think you could ever accuse Bailly of is lacking confidence in himself. No. So yeah, I would play him, and I think in general, I think that he's looked. Even the match he got a red card in under Solskjaer, I thought he looked great in that. I think he's looked really, really good since coming back into the side under Solskjaer.
I agree.
So I would play him, and I don't know. I feel. I don't want to say I feel confident because I hate these matches so much. It's just nerve wracking.
You just never can tell.
Yeah,
can you?
But I do think that when we went to Anfield, I would have been. I think none of us picked United to win that. It was pretty much hopefully it doesn't get too embarrassing, which 3-1 scoreline didn't even do justice to how embarrassing that was. But this, I do think we can match up with them. It just depends on how Solskjaer approaches. I'm actually very curious if he will stick with Mata at 10 if he does play diamond because of how athletic and quick Liverpool are. I'm interested to see who he would slot in there. Maybe if we could see Pogba in that position, and maybe bring in another midfielder, be it Fred or Pereira or something like that. I don't know. I'm very interested to see how he approaches this match, and that position specifically seems very key to the diamond. So I'm very interested. I don't know. I don't even know who I would play there. I think I would probably play Sanchez to start, but Mata did play very well against Chelsea, but a much more low-energy Chelsea side than Liverpool are.
Yeah, I've been sort of going over this, obviously in preparation for this, knowing that we'd be talking about obviously possible lineups. And I think I've gone through every sort of possible combination, but I think from what I think would work, I think a 3 at the back. And this is just me just sort of talking out loud, but I think if you played 3 at the back with Matic, Pogba, Herrera and Rashford and Lukaku up front, you play Dalot on the right, you play Ashley Young on the left, but you play Luke Shaw as the left-sided centre-back.
Oh, okay.
Which I think he'd be really, really good at in sort of that Kyle Walker for England-esque role just on the left.
Yeah, and he's strong in the air too.
He's very good in the air. He's built like a tank, and he's extremely quick. And I think that would go a lot of the way. Also, obviously, Ashley Young is adept at delivery from the left as well. So
Shaw could end up being our left-sided version of Azpilicueta. Actually, that might actually be a decent comparison for him.
Possibly. Hey, who knows? But that was kind of one. If I was to go a bit mental with it, that would be my experimentation right there, would be to maybe go sort of Bailly, Jones, Lindelof Bailly, Lindelof and Shaw with Young on the left and Dalot on the right. Maybe that gets Dalot involved, and that sort of gives us some natural width as well, gives us another option to get something on Lukaku's head maybe. Who knows? But
I wonder if he even starts Lukaku. I am curious about that.
I think he will.
I think he will, but I'm curious to see because
he needs someone to let Virgil van Dijk know that he's in a game.
That's true.
That's sort of he's going to be used as the battering ram against Van Dijk just to make sure it's right, yeah, you are in a game now, and put him up against one of the strongest in the league. I think that'll probably come in handy as well to beat the press. Is the best way to beat the press is just to go straight over it a lot of the time, and I think Lukaku will be targeted in that way. I love the fact that this is happening on Sunday, but I'm also in your boat as well. Is I hate because I think it's without Martial and Lingard there, I think the game loses a little bit of something because we're now finding ways of possibly counteracting what could be from an 11v11 standpoint. something that, in terms of form over the course of the season, I don't think you can really argue with the fact that Liverpool are where they are for a reason. Right. But I think if you put Martial and Lingard on the pitch and you get that strongest 11 of ours out there, now it's just, okay, where are we in terms of our own league now? Obviously, we've got the City game, and we might learn something from that, and we've got a couple of more league games.
This is the one, though.
Against Chelsea. This is like... This will not make or break Solskjaer. Let's just get that out of the way now. And I don't think anybody would be necessarily, again, be disappointed with a loss given what Liverpool have achieved over this season. Obviously, we'll be disappointed to lose to Liverpool, but the greater context needs to be considered as well. I think the biggest thing is just how do we perform? How do we, like, if it's a spirited draw, then it's a spirited draw. If it's another game like PSG where the players don't turn up, or they just come out flat for one portion of the match, or if it goes flat, questions then need to start. A few questions might start to be asked. I don't think it'll have a great determination whether or not he gets the job full time, but another big home game, and it's the second big home game in a row. It can't fall flat again. Yeah, it just can't.
And for the record, I think that at this point, I think that he has the job. I think it would require some just horrific run of form and terrible level of drop in our play for him to not get the job at this point. But that's not really relevant to the current discussion. I think with this match, it's like, I will say that I know what you were saying. You know, if we had a full strength side, it'd be nice to just see, okay, where do we stack up? When we have all of our starting 11, we have our best 11 out there, how do we stack up against, the best team in the league? It would have been nice to see that. But what I do like is, now we're seeing how does Solskjaer adjust? How does he, how does he take a punch hat and move on? How does he adjust his tactics when he doesn't have his 11, and what better match to see how he can adapt than this match against Liverpool, against the best Liverpool side, since they finished second to, City? Yeah, right. This is, I think they're a clearly better side than even that Liverpool was. Definitely more balanced. And yeah, like, well, what better occasion for him to kind of, like, if he does win and it is, for more or less a quote unquote tactical masterclass on his part, I think that he basically gets the job off that. I just can't see how it would just, and a result against Liverpool, given, like you mentioned, just our season to date, their season to date, how embarrassing it was the last time we played them. I would be shocked if we beat Liverpool and we don't finish top four, because that's a result that all of a sudden, you really, I know that the confidence is high right now in the squad, and it's good to see that it stayed high even after they got a lesson from PSG. But when you beat Liverpool, I think it really can, it goes beyond whatever they've achieved thus far, and I'm sure they're aware of that themselves.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a good one. I don't know when we're next back in the old hot seat. I imagine, given the gravitas of a Liverpool game, I imagine that we'll all be queuing up to be behind the microphone, I would imagine. Hopefully we don't win by too big a margin so that everybody decides they don't want to turn up again for like tonight. But thank you, as always, to Ashwin, and thank you to you all for getting this far with it. Just quickly, just to round it off, predictions?
2-1 United.
Ooh, I predict goals. No, that's a rubbish prediction because I don't want it to be 0-0 now. I'm going for a brave 3-1.
Oh,
I think it'll be a close 3-1.
Yeah,
it'll be one of those
get a counter at the end.
It'd be a 2-1 and then a counter at the end. Maybe a sort of a penalty or something like that. 3-1 and a Pogba goal in there somewhere. I think Firmino will score and Pogba will score, and 3-1. and I might have a tenner on that actually.
All right. Okay.
Excellent. Nice one. Thank you again to everyone for listening. This has been sort of one of those haberdash kind of 2-man episodes, which can be quite difficult sometimes. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, and see you again after the Liverpool game.
All right. Good night.
Good night, all. Peace.